trying to contact a large amount of people to try to identify and gain some information from witnesses at the scene. So you can imagine it's a monumental task with the number of employees that work inside the building.
Chief, can you tell us about what weapon or weapons?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us about what weapon or weapons?
I don't have that information. I'm sorry.
Do you have the...
They're in one room. Both of them were suffering gunshot wounds. There are 3 other victims with what police are now calling gunshot-related injuries. One of them is serious. The other 2, we're told, is non-life-threatening. Now, in the early going, there was questions about whether the shooter did make it into the building. Now we know that answer, especially after one of the victims ran into a nearby Carl's Jr. restaurant with a shooting wound. Watch.
A lady had come out of the YouTube building, actually limped or came into Carl's Jr., had a gunshot in her foot. That's right about, there were barely any police there at the time. And then also next, from all directions, police, not slowly, but started coming. And you knew something was serious because people started crowding around. Police started coming from every direction.
Yeah, and consider the enormous task. This is a 200,000 square foot building, YouTube's primary headquarters. Police were in that building going room to room. There was talk of a second shooter, and police have not confirmed that nobody else was involved, but at this point, they believe this was the work of one shooter, a female shooter. We should note the president has tweeted on this, and I'm quoting here, we just briefed on the shooting at YouTube's headquarters in San Bruno, California. Our thoughts and prayers are with everybody involved. Thank you to our phenomenal law enforcement officers and first responders that are on scene right now. And you'll recall it was just a couple of weeks ago, Brett, that YouTube banned firearm sales and how-to gun videos on YouTube. Remember, this has parallels. A female shooter is very, very rare. It draws parallels, and we're told this was a Google party happening at the time. It draws parallels to the San Bernardino shooting where 2 people went in during that Christmas party and opened fire. That was terrorism. This, at this point, appears to be domestic violence. Brett.
Yeah, Trace, you said it was a Google party at the time. We're hearing from some of those eyewitnesses that there was some sort of back porch area where people go out for lunch and that perhaps this shooter didn't really make it all the way into the building itself.
Well, police did say that she was found inside a room, so she did make it into the building at one point in time, which is not to discount the witnesses, because it's very possible that she began shooting on the outside and made her way inside, because remember, we have 4 victims now, gunshot-related wounds, so it's very possible that the gunfire began outside and that she apparently at one point in time made her way inside, but it's our understanding that she was found with the most seriously injured of the victims inside a room, meaning that she did make it in, but the person who was shot in the leg and went to Carl's Jr., what's unclear is whether she was actually inside the building and ran into the parking lot and then into the Carl's for treatment, or whether she was in the parking lot when she encountered the shooter and was shot there. Still some details we're looking for clarification on, Brett.
All right, we'll head back for any details on that. Trace, thanks. Let's get some insight quickly about how law enforcement is operating here. John Iannarelli is a former special agent with the FBI. He's in Phoenix tonight. Thanks for being here. I guess first I want to ask you about what Trace mentioned, that a female shooter is extremely rare. Stats-wise, that's pretty accurate.
It is. It's rare that we see a female shooter in these types of situations. Last year, for example, there were 28 separate active shooter incidents in the U.S. All of them were carried out by males.
Now, if this is a domestic violence situation, which it may be, you handle it the same way as any active shooter. They had to go through all of those people exiting the building with their hands up and dealing to make sure that they weren't involved in some way.
Exactly. The police did a great job in this situation. They were on scene in just 2 minutes, which is incredibly quick. But you still have this 200,000 square foot office space, all these employees. The police need to figure out, is there one shooter? Is it terrorism? Is it something else? Everybody has to be treated carefully. And as a subject, it's good to know what to do in these types of situations.
Yeah, and last thing, listening to that police chief there in San Bruno, not the biggest police department, but one that effectively, as you mentioned, got there very quickly. Your take on this is probably a domestic issue that is it targeting in some way or another?
Well, the investigation is going to tell more, but right now it looks like it's a domestic issue. But even so, you see multiple people were shot. These situations, it doesn't matter whether you're an innocent bystander, they can affect us all.
Of course. Yeah, and the security is key. John Iannarelli, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll stay tuned for any details out of California as we follow that breaking news there. A lot of news here in Washington, political news. We start at the White House, where they're in increasing bluster from President Trump about a caravan of around 1,000 to 1,500 immigrants from Central America, the group traveling through Mexico toward the U.S. border, and the president